Welcome to Bitter Reality Brewing. Yes, there have been people asking about brewing a cider, a hard apple cider on the iGulu. So, you know, I was looking to do the amber lager, and I'm still excited and I want to do the amber lager, but I figure if people are curious about doing an apple cider, we're going to do an apple cider. So yeah, it's going to be stupid simple, but there's going to be some key things that you're going to want to need to know so you don't mess up and have no fermentation and end up with just cider that's been sitting around for a little while. Don't forget, hit like, subscribe, keep sharing. I'm going to share that information right away. Here we go. So this is going to be so easy. You don't need any water. Yeah, no water. Why? Because you're going to have your apple juice or apple cider, whatever you want, okay? First, I want to mention something that I saw recently on here that I didn't even realize. You must have missed it, don't know if it's in the documentation, but as I've told you before, when you're working with this, you have to pull the relief valve or PRV, pressure relief valve, to let out all the gas so you can push it down so you can get the C-clamp off. Well, guess what? I didn't even notice. There is a little lip all the way around this thing, and you may or may not be able to see it in the video here. I'm going to see if I can put it. There's a little notch right at the very edge, and it's on both sides. Well, guess what? That hooks up under there. So you can't pull this off unless this is pushed down, and you can't push this down unless you release the valve. It protects you from yourself. Love those kinds of safety features, but it's a cool, very, very cool safety feature. The other thing where I mentioned you can unscrew this and clean it, you're still gonna wanna put this in because it opens the little valve in between to allow flow. But I have everything clean. We're gonna use a Mangrove Jack's cider yeast, okay? And just so you know, you can use beer yeast in ciders. You can use different types of yeast. I wouldn't recommend bread yeast. Yeah, just don't. It's not that great. But yeah, you find a local homebrew shop, you get yourself a thing of yeast. You can also get it online. Usually it'll cost you a little bit more. I'll see if I can find an inexpensive one and throw it down in the links below for like Amazon or something. But some of the really good English ones are really good. The key here is you're gonna want, most likely you're gonna want, I don't know for fact, a high attenuation. Attenuation is how much of the sugars it's gonna be able to eat, okay? If you want something a little naturally sweet, then you're gonna go for a medium attenuation. Low attenuation is probably gonna be overly sweet. And then you want, maybe, don't know, if you want the cider to be very clear, you want a high flocculation, which is where the yeast falls out of suspension. Medium flocculation or other lower flocculations are going to leave more of that yeast inside of that cider, and it's going to be very hazy. You're not going to be able to see through it. It's not going to impact the flavor. Well, it will, but not in a negative way. It's just a different flavor. So I'll mention a couple yeast down below and give you some links to them, make it somewhere that you can get it inexpensively on shipping. So it's probably going to be Amazon, but if you have a local home brew shop, it's going to be easier. Plus, when you buy your little sachet, as they call them, or sachet bag, whatever, of this, this is for 5 gallons. When you pitch it, I do recommend using a quarter of it. That way you have a little, it's better to overpitch a little than underpitch. So you're gonna wanna use about a quarter of it. You can do it by sight and weight, you know, figure out what you wanna do. The less handling of the yeast, the better. So let's get doing this, okay? First of all, I'm gonna list something about the ciders or apple juices that you buy down here. These are chemicals you do not want in the ingredient list. Very bad, will not ferment, do not buy these types of apple juices. Number 2, preferably get something that says 100%. 100% apple juice, apple cider, whatever, is the way you want to go. Number 3, you want it to be hazy. You want it to look all foggy like that. Why? Because it's less processed. Yeah, less filtered. And you're gonna have sediment on the bottom, and you wanna shake that sediment up, get it in there really good. Why? Because that sediment is gonna have mineral content. That mineral content is something the yeast needs to grow healthy and do its job. So those are a couple recommendations to keep in mind. You will not need a way to measure this. Why? Because the iGulu already comes with one. Yes, the iGulu says minimum, maximum. Well, when we're doing beer, we do the minimum and we add the malt extract, which actually pushes it up a little bit, okay? So today, we're just gonna add all the apple juice right up to the max. And I'm gonna make this one a little special, but it's optional for you. You don't have to do this. If you do have a local homebrew shop and you go grab yourself some yeast, you can also grab yourself some hops. Yeah. It smells so good. We're gonna drop a 1/4 ounce. I could probably get away with a 1/2 ounce, but I'm just gonna try a 1/4 ounce. I haven't done this before. So we're gonna go with a 1/4 ounce of Citra hops. And a 1/4 ounce of citra hops is going to add a hint of a very mild floral, but it's going to add some citrus notes, and it's going to add more aroma, which is going to help this cider really stand out really nice. I'm already going for an extremely dry cider, and I'm going for a clear cider. The hops are going to maybe add a little haze to it. And if you've heard of the word dry hopping, well, dry hopping is when you add hops at the end of fermentation. We don't want to open this up because it's going to be cold crashing. Everything is all inclusive. Instead, we're going to do what they call wet hop. We're going to drop the hops in during the beginning of the fermentation, and it'll still add to the flavor, it'll add to the aromas, and it's still going to give it a nice boost, should we say. So let's get brewing, okay? We're going to make this super simple. Like I said, these two, also another trick is to let these get to room temperature. That's what you want them at room temperature. You shouldn't have to pasteurize them or anything. This is at room temperature. I grabbed another one. This one's cold, I'm not too worried. Why did I have to grab another one? Well, this is about a gallon, okay? These are 52 ounces. They were $3.20 US at my local Aldi's. So I've got about $6.40, and then I'm gonna be a little shy, so I need a little bit more of this one. And it's still gonna keep me around maybe $7.20, something like that, total cost. The yeast I already had, the hops I already had, but of course those are additional costs because you probably don't have those. So let's just go ahead. This has all been cleaned. Everything's nice and clean. My hands are relatively clean. I've been playing with the cider. Also, I know you may not have this. If you have a hydrometer, you can take a hydrometer reading, be very careful, make sure everything's super, super sanitized. That way you can use that cider that you're taking the original gravity. The original gravity is kind of a potential sugars in the liquid for the alcohol that could end up from the fermentation. Currently, we're looking at 1.053 original gravity. If this ferments out like it usually does with ciders, which means it ferments almost every single sugar in there, we're probably gonna be sitting close to 1.000, which will put us at 6.96 approximate alcohol by volume. So that's about 7% ABV on a cider. That's nice. I'm impressed. 7 is like my magic number. It really helps to enhance the flavors because you perceive alcohol as sugar, and too much alcohol. That's why sometimes you have a high ABV drink and it tastes overly sweet. Well, if you had a couple before that to numb the palate, it would. Or you have something very light and you don't notice the flavors or the nuances as much. It's the same thing I always tell people about coffee. If you take black coffee, you're not going to notice as many flavors. You add a little sugar to it, next thing you notice all the nuances and the bits of chocolate, or maybe you eat a little bit of citrus in there, or some roasted flavors that you didn't notice before. So that perceived sugar is going to help us with the flavor that we're gonna taste in the actual finished cider. So let's go ahead. Let's get this, okay. Also, getting any air that is in there kind of into suspension, although I doubt there's any O2 sitting in there. And I'm just literally gonna pour it. And you want it to splash around. Remember what we talked about? Splashing around, you're gonna get some of that air into suspension, and in the air is a little bit of oxygen, and that yeast really likes oxygen. So there's one. Let's just dump the next one. And on top of that, I'm hoping to show it to you, I created a fermentation, I don't know what you call recipe, but basically I created my own fermentation log for a cider in the iGulu app. And I'm gonna tell the iGulu I wanna use that to ferment. I've done 8 days, 8 or 9, I believe 8 days at 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Why? Because I checked the yeast and it says 54 to like 82. 74, the higher temp isn't gonna be quite as smooth, but it's gonna bring out more flavor. So I'm gonna go for that. And we're gonna dump this next one in here. Let it splash around, it's all good, just don't splash out. The other thing nice, if you haven't noticed, in the cleaning video, I didn't really show it off, but the opening on the iGulu is large enough to get most people's hands through it. So you can get your hand in there with a sponge and really clean it really well. I should have mentioned that. I kind of thought it was obvious, but looking back at that video, it wasn't as obvious as I'd hoped. So there we go. We've dumped both of them in there, but I need to get to the 1 gallon mark. So I'm gonna go to the full 1 gallon. We're gonna add a little bit more. This is gonna cool it down a little bit, but I'm not too worried. Okay, we are right at the max. Maybe a hair over. Okay, that's it. I'm just sitting right at the little line here for the max. Hopefully I don't drop it. That would be a very bad thing to do. Now the hops, optional, you don't need to. It smells so freaking good. I'm just dropping them in, that's it. Just dumping them in, I don't care, it's all good. Now I've got the yeast. I'm gonna shake that up a little bit. I don't really shake it. What I'm doing is I'm getting it away from the top so it doesn't just fall out when I open it. You don't need to shake the yeast. Now, if it's liquid, yeah, I would a little bit, because sometimes it can separate a bit. Not really a good flavor or smell. Smell. And I'm gonna sprinkle some of that yeast right on top. It's probably more than enough. I think I did almost a third. A little hard to measure by sight. Okay, that's it. We're almost done. I'm gonna put the lid on, push it all the way down. I'm gonna take the clamp, I call it a C-clamp. It's on there, it's loose. Remember, it will push up with pressure as it's fermenting, and when it does that, this clamp will get very tight. So now I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna take the lid off. We're gonna pick it up. We're gonna set it down. Take the air hose, connect it. Liquid, we almost forgot the liquid, or I almost forgot. You know what, I forgot something. I forgot the straw or dip tube. Not a problem. Take it out. Pop the C-clamp off. This happens. Things happen. You forget stuff. Also, when you're cleaning, there's a little O-ring there. You take that off and clean it really well. I should have mentioned that in the last video, but I did not. I looked for the side that has all the little marks from where it's been pushed in a few times before, and it's nice and snug. We're gonna set that in there. Okay, let's try this again. Put the clamp on, it's snug. We'll set it back down. Take the air, snap it on. Take the liquid, and remember, we're gonna wanna make sure it's clamped all the way. Okay, pull this off. We push the hose all the way down, okay? And we have to do this to get the hose to go all the way down. I feel like the hose is gonna come back out the other end, but it never does. Okay, so it's closed off. Oops, I gotta open it up. Why? Because it's not back far enough. There we go. And it has to come back past that opening. So I'm gonna put that on there. That's on. I'm gonna put this on here. And we'll do another video on how I created the program, but I'll show you the little program now. We'll go into the iGulu. There's the app. Open. As you can see, I have the cider, I have a hef, and then I have the ones in Chinese, which eventually they're gonna fix that, so not a big deal. So I picked cider, and I believe all I have to do is hit brewing. Let's see. Okay, so I'm having a little issue with the app, so we're gonna go over here and we're just gonna use this. Not a big deal. They're working on updating the app. It hasn't been updated yet. Okay, we're gonna go for that. Say brew, and there it goes. Okay, it's heating up, as you can tell. I had a little problem with the app. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but every time I hit brew, it jumped out and I had to re-log in. I'll reach out to support. That's why iGulu has support. And like I said, I've talked to a couple people. The support's really quick. They're either like right away or about 24 hours based on what you're asking, and you know, it's a weekend or whatever's going on, holiday. So keep that in mind. But yeah, it'll be here for 8 days at 68 degrees Fahrenheit instead of the 74 I was gonna try for. Not a big deal, we'll do it next time. And then it's gonna go down to a cold crash for 4 days, and we'll be ready to test the cider. Citra hopped apple cider, hard cider at 7% hopefully. Yeah, looking forward to it. Cheers. Don't forget, yeah, like, subscribe, keep sharing. Appreciate you. Thank you.